BBC News revealed there were 100 people with learning disabilities and autism who'd been detained in a hospital for more than 20 years. Since then, several people across the UK have been in touch regarding their own battles to have loved ones released. Our correspondent Jane McCubbin has been to Northern Ireland to meet a woman who's been fighting for 34 years to bring her brother home.
It's a journey I will never forget. There was a lot of crying, there was a lot of weeping and wailing.
This was the journey which broke Brigine's family.
My mother was in the back of the ambulance and I was with her, and the ambulance crew were trying to prevent Brian from hurting himself.
34 years ago, this was the journey which took her brother to the hospital, where he is still detained today.
He hasn't moved other than to move to a different ward. He's still within the walls of the same place.
You needed help,
yeah.
You needed support.
He did need help, but he also needed to come home whenever he was ready to come home, which hasn't happened.
I've travelled to Northern Ireland to meet Brigine.
Good morning.
Good morning. Hello.
One of thousands of families across the UK fighting to bring a loved one home.
That's our Brian. We've all now got a copy of that in everybody's house. He's still a part of the family. So
between his mum and 7 siblings, Brian had originally thrived.
At that stage, he couldn't even sit up without support.
They'd helped him navigate a world which often fails people with autism and learning disabilities. But as Brian turned 21, life changed for them all. Increasingly unable to cope, he was detained under the Mental Health Act. They were told he'd be back here in 12 weeks.
34 years since he went into the hospital and 25 years since the doctors said he was fit for discharge. Brian is still sitting in the hospital.
It's a quarter of a century.
Quarter of a century.
You all stayed close because you all knew you needed to be here when Brian came home.
We always kept hoping and thinking that he was going to be able to come home.
But Brian can only leave with the right community support. Today, they launch a judicial review to force authorities to provide that.
Mostly his whole adult life has been spent in a hospital.
And that hospital is Muckamore Abbey. The hospital at the heart of the largest abuse investigation in the history of the NHS. To date, over 70 staff have been suspended.
Brian is non-verbal. He can't communicate through speech. People who can't speak up for themselves, people who can't defend themselves. It's so awful.
A public inquiry has opened.
I can't.
Brigine will be her brother's voice. Belfast Health and Social Care Trust said no one should call a hospital their home, but due to the complex care needs of many long-term patients, resettlement can be challenging. For Brigine, it isn't complex. It's simple. Brian needs to be home.
Brian has been deprived of the love of his family.
One day, she hopes she will make this journey for the very last time.
We never give up. As long as we live, we will keep on trying to get Brian to a place where he can live the rest of his life in peace and happiness. No, never give up.
Jane McCubbin, BBC News.